Did Lorraine Warren ever say to not move the artifacts?
I don't know where so that's kind of like this ball of yarn that's knotted together. There's layers to it, right? And Lorraine absolutely talked about the dangers of the items. And they did keep it in the museum under lock and key. But they also allowed people to view the items safely, right? Because they were allowed to have people in their homes. So in later years, Lorraine would bring, when the Warrens had this renewed interest, because when she was on her show Paranormal State, that reintroduced her to older fans and then also new ones. Paranormal State had a very young audience too. So she would bring these items out to Paranormal State events and stuff. Lorraine did. We have proof of this. So, when people say, oh, they said never to bring the items out, I'm like, that's not exactly true, because the first time I met Annabelle was not in the museum. It was when Lorraine brought the items to Pennsylvania. So, some of the other members of Nesper who've been around since the 80s, 90s, talk about occasionally they would bring the doll upstairs or elsewhere. We're trying to look for proof of that, because there's pictures and stuff all over. We're trying to slowly piece that together, just like how I just found photographic proof of Lorraine from 2010 doing this in 2009. But the thing is, above all, we also want to adapt with the times, right? Like, think about how things are. This is not 1952 anymore. So things change and evolve. And if Ed and Lorraine, if they were alive now, during this era, this techno-internet era, with the Conjuring, worldwide fan base, we do believe Ed and Lorraine would have evolved and adapted to introduce the new generation to what's going on, to expose the ways of the devil, as Ed called it. So I do believe that they would have embraced this. I know Lorraine would have, because she was already starting to do that in her 80s.
What was so interesting last night? Did any of you guys go to the investigations of Dustin last night? Yeah, hey. The first group that went through, it didn't go through in your group, David, but so they were saying a guest from Scarefest said, is there any good spirits in this room with us? And it was so interesting. I don't know if you were in the room for this, but the ghost box kept coming back. Ed came back 3 times, and that was really cool. So I went up and asked Chris. I said, "Does that happen a lot, or is it just like a coincidence or something?" He said, "No, that happens a lot." And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I've heard that from them. For me, again, my connection is Lorraine. So sometimes, even around these artifacts, it's also possible that they're around.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys know, but Elton Castee and Matt Rife bought the house. And so it's transitioning. And I've been very fortunate and blessed to be able to go there and help with some of that process and pay my respects, say goodbye to the house. And while I was there in the house, everyone's like, oh, the artifacts. To me, I didn't have any of those experiences. No, don't get me wrong, the first night I was like, Wade was like, Ryan, I don't know if any of you guys know Wade. He's a little eccentric. He was like, let's put some ghost devices, out here. And I was like, okay, let's keep them in the living room. And then as I was getting ready for bed in the den, he has them right in the hallway, right where I could see it. And they're going off as I'm trying to sleep. I eventually had to go and turn them off. But, everyone was telling me to sleep in the most active room in the house. And, some of the overnight crew from Elton's team were there, and they were talking about how really spooky it was. And they felt like some of the spirits felt like they got more room to roam and play now. But now that it's kind of Ed and Lorraine's belongings are being taken out. So they were kind of concerned of, hey, sleep in there, what do you get? Let's tell us what you see. But I didn't have that experience. I felt a positive presence. And Wade even said to me, he goes, you know what, I don't know if you are going to have these dark experiences in the house. I think Lorraine is going to make herself known.
It makes sense she would protect people and she would kind of keep doing the work, you know what I mean, of making sure everybody was safe. I have one more question for you, and we still have probably 15, 20 more minutes, and then so when I ask this question, you guys will be thinking of questions too. But I have to ask this, and I wanted to ask last night, but didn't have time. My question is, with these items, they are dangerous. Why keep them? Why not? Is there a way that, could you exorcise the spirit from the items or burn them? Or, I don't understand that part of the paranormal as much. Do you have any information for that?
I mean, I can tell you the philosophy and theory behind it. So, Ed and Lorraine, I was talking about this a little bit today. Ed and Lorraine, it's kind of like a grand experiment, right? Instead of having, hey, there's an attachment to this is causing all this stuff in the house. Instead of cleansing it or exorcising the space and removing the attachment, in this case, negative demonic entities. If we do that, it is now free to go to its next assignment. In the Catholic, especially in Catholic Christian demonology, the philosophy is the demonic, they are beyond time. They already have their next assignment. So when a demonic force is expelled, just like how it talks about in the Bible when Jesus cast out the demonic from the possessed person and went straight to another, that the demonic have its next assignment. So Ed, and Lorraine, but Ed being the demonologist, he preferred to bind the inhuman entities to the object and then keep it contained. And I think even in the movie, Ed says, best to keep the genie in the bottle. And there is precedence for this. And I was actually talking to a gentleman from Scarefest. King Solomon would do something similar, right? And Ed Warren had a lot of books on King Solomon, who was given permission, by God over the demonic. And so Ed keeps these entities bound so they cannot go and harm another family. So it's this, I call it an experiment, right? Because it's been almost 75 years since Nesper was founded. Annabelle has been in their possession for over 50 years. And with Nesper and the team and everyone involved, we hope to continue that so it cannot move on or latch on to its next victim.
I know I lied and I said that was my last question, but I thought of another one. How different is the Conjuring movies to real life? Like the cases, and not even just the Conjuring. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of my knowledge of the Warrens is from Amityville Horror and all of these iconic cases. How much of it's different?
I mean, it's Hollywood, right? I guess the best comparison is even if you go in the museum and you see the movie version of Annabelle and the real, right? They're so different.
Why'd they make her uglier?
Right. I guess they wanted to make the doll look more sinister.
That's what I
right?
said.
They did it.
And I heard also, I don't know how true this is, but that Mattel was like, no, you're not using our doll in a horror movie.
I told you, copyright.
So they had, and it's copyrighted. There's many Raggedy Anns. So, the demonic don't discriminate if something's copyrighted or not. They'll attach to whatever. So that is why. But yes, the movies have taken liberties. They're not documentaries, folks. So of course, and in fact, they usually merge a couple cases together or different themes for the movies. For me, I see it as that. It's just, if you want to know the truth, then you can read their books. You can go on the Nesper website.
Movies are like a good gateway
Yes.
to learning more and being interested. I did see a hand go up back there. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So I know that they wrote the books and stuff, but I know that there's like other authors' names on it. How close
So I can only give you an educated guess because only really Ed and Lorraine would know that. And I do have an add-on to that. Ed and Lorraine were very involved in the writing process. In fact, while I was going through, Ed and Lorraine's house and helping the family pack, I found original manuscripts where there's like notes,
Those would be cool to have in the collection and stuff.
Yeah.
I like you all had her skirt and her hair bow up there, and I was like, oh, that's like a nice touch. It's not all scary up here.
I think people would love to see that. Like, yes, there's the haunted artifacts, but then like, here's some of their stuff.
Paranormal history.
Paranormal history. So I absolutely believe they were involved. My add-on to that is that with Elton Castet and Matt Rife, buying the house and this goal of Nesper that will happen next year of opening up a brand new museum that's open to the public, one of the things that they're doing is they're going to help curate all these documents and start putting some of these pieces together because we don't have Ed and Lorraine to ask anymore. We all knew at least one of them or both. And Tony is a wealth of knowledge, but we don't want to lose the information as we're all getting older.
I'm a librarian, so I'm sitting here being like, oh, you gotta digitize that. You gotta get all that together and archive it. Does anybody else have some more questions for him? Yes.
I was just going to ask how involved Tony and Judy still is with everything.
Tony and Judy are very involved. They are still the owners of all the items. They sold the house. I know the internet had a reaction to that, but really, none of us own it. It's not really our business.
Some of the relatives did too. That was.
Yeah. I try my best to stay out of the family because it's a family matter.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is Tony and Judy's decision to make. And people were saying, "Oh, they shouldn't be doing this. They shouldn't be doing that." Look, when someone passes away, like a parent, and that's not your house, normally eventually you're going to sell it. And I think some people, it's like, what, you just want it to be a mausoleum forever? Well, who's going to pay for all that? Where it's just sitting there. And then Lorraine passed almost 7 years ago, and it was mostly kept as is, right? For 7 years after she passed, they kept it as is. That's a long time. I doubt many of you guys have done that. So they held on as long as they could, and now it's just Tony and Judy are getting older, and it was time to think about the future. And so Elton and Matt, they have not necessarily renovated, they're restoring it. When I saw the changes, I remember saying to Chris and Wade and Tony, like, it still feels like their house. But Tony and Judy are very involved with, and they, not only them, but the team are all consultants for the house. The team is staying on as staff for the house. Elton and Matt could have just hired outsiders. They're not. And Tony and Judy are deciding what goes to the museum, what stays at the house, and what they keep, etc.
Well, you said yesterday, this really stuck out to me because, again, I don't know about any of you guys. When I saw that Matt Rife bought the house, I did have a gut reaction, like, oh, man. But, like, you said he was being really respectful to the family and to their memory. Like, well, did you talk about the chicken coop last night? Was that you?
It might have been, or Rick.
Yeah.
But, so, Elton and his team and Matt, like, they, Lorraine's old chicken coop area, they turned into a spiritual meditation room. It's open, like you can walk into it from outside. And it's dedicated to Dan. And you have the haunted artifacts and the house and your ghost hunting, but there's this room with dozens of blessed crucifixes, a huge statue of St. Michael, and the St. Michael prayer, which is very special to us and to Dan. It could be a meditation area, a quiet sitting area, right? It's been blessed. I was actually there for Father Bob's blessing of the room. So, it is this special space. And I believe Lorraine would have loved that addition. And in the seat is actually a church pew. Everything is so thoughtful that they're doing to the house.
Yeah, they were saying that really was mental. Like we didn't ask them to do that.
Right.
That was really cool. Oh, does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
So, I remember in particular with Annabelle, Ed and Lorraine had to, while transporting her, started having car trouble, thankfully it affected that, and had to sprinkle holy water on the dolls well outside of the car tires, just to ensure their safety. Now you have Annabelle going to the collection of some of the more notorious object museum. So I was just wondering if you had anything similar happen, or what precautions you all take to ensure the safety of your team.
Good question. So first and foremost, we try not, this is going to sound very hypocritical, we try not to give it attention. I say this as we're at a convention giving it attention, but I mean like while we're transporting it, right? So the case itself, and I apologize as people are like, I've already heard this spiel, but the case itself is a protective layer. It's got holy oil infused in it. 3 crosses represent the Trinity. It sits on a bench that has the word, the Lord's Prayer burned into it. Then the St. Michael, and then you have Father Bob, who blesses the vehicle, the case again, does the binding prayer ritual as it's being transported, right? It is bound to the case, and then the vehicle is protected. So it's already bound to the object, bound and kept into the case, and then the car is also protected. Then when we bring it to the room, Father Bob essentially blesses the room, almost like making it like a temporary museum space, like the museum and how that's protected. And then it goes to everything about that is in great detail too. Even like the frankincense and myrrh, being poured into like a humidifier and it's just going in the air. But we did have experiences. There are times when it can be a little pushy. And the only reason why I'll share this one with you is because Rick said this on Elton's overnight YouTube channel. But we actually had an experience in Maine, right? It was Maine, where, the items have to be with us at all times. So we brought the doll up to the hotel room, which, you can imagine, you get a little rolling cart, hotel cart, and we're rolling the Annabelle through. But we're just, hanging out, and it was Rick and Wade, and then there's just the doll right there in its case, covered. They started experiencing a light show in their room. It was like little fireworks going off in midair. And they called me like, dude, there's something going on right now. So I'm like, all right. So I went up, and they're a little rattled, right? They're just sitting there. They're on their phones, and they just see like this spark, like a little miniature firework go off in their room, and a popping and everything. And so, I'm like, okay, and I documented their experience, left, went back down to my hotel room, and they called me, and they're like, it just happened again, only bigger. So I went up there, and I just camped out with them. I didn't experience the spark, but all of a sudden, all the electronics in the room went out, and even like the lights, they were like, it was like, like it was kind of wild. And so our priest, Father Bob, was done, asleep for the night. So we recognized, we had to kind of do a layman's blessing. And, we just recognized that with the travel, with all the energy, sure, it can be a little bit more active, but it is still attached and bound to the doll.
I've just been thinking, when I interviewed Dan, one of my favorite things about him is he kind of had a sense of humor, and I really liked that about him, because you could tell I like the joke. But one of my genuine questions was, do we need to ask permission before we photograph it?
No.
And because I've always heard about Robert the doll, and I just thought that's just what you do on dolls, you ask permission. And he went, no, it's a demon. We don't communicate with it. And I was, good answer. That's a great answer. And my other question I asked, and he laughed so hard at this, is it was so cool on Scarefest TV that he got the webcam and showed us the museum. You know, it's funny, everybody's so scared of Annabelle, as they rightfully should be, but he's like, these are the knives that children were sacrificed with, and this is the masks that they wore. And I was like, why do you guys have all the lights red in there? Like, is it just to induce diarrhea from being so scared? And he just starts laughing, and he's like, no, that's what Ed wanted it as. And how did the museum come to be what we know it as? Because the red lights make that Raggedy Ann look much scarier.
Well, sure. I mean, there's nothing wrong with adding effects, right? Whether it's a blue light, red light, white light, there's no extra harm to that. And the aesthetic, when people go into a haunted museum to see the infamous doll, if we had all the lights on like this and it was just like on a case, we're like, here you are. I'm sure people would bitch about that. Be like,
yeah.
Why is it not spooky? I was expecting spooky.
It was so scary. Like, I was on that Scarefest TV episode, and I said that, and he just started laughing, but, like, I'm not even joking.
Diarrhea.
Yeah, because it is, like, it's just, you get the shits from being so scared. And, like, well, like, it's the weirdest thing. Again, I'm skeptical. I've never really come across an item and been like, that's haunted. But I got a headache when we were filming. I was like, my head hurts really bad. And I would hear like a ringing in my ears. And I said that, and Dane and Chris were like, we hear growling behind us. And I was like, I believe you. I absolutely believe you. And that's why I have to be at this investigation, or I'll fight somebody. So, it was great.
It was great.
It was awesome. It was great.
Evil things behind me. Awesome.
I love it. Does anybody else have any questions? I know y'all didn't come to hear me yap. I saw your hand go up first, but I will get you to.
I'm just, you mentioned when you first started out, there was that family that called you asking for your help. What were you able to do to help resolve this situation?
Really, a lot of times it's just being heard and believed. Now, we do our best. I'm not saying we were always successful, but sometimes there's no guarantees with anything, right? I know we brought in a psychic medium to help them. That made a difference. Sometimes that's all that's needed, is a psychic medium to communicate with the spirit and help them pass. Because not everything's demonic. But a lot of times it's just like normalizing the experience. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go back to school and become a therapist. Because I was told that I kind of already was doing that. And so, just without the license and the degree, just being believed makes a huge difference. Being validated. I mean, think about that. Guy, girl, whatever, like, all of us, we need that in our lives sometimes. And when everyone is just looking at you like you're crazy, and you're like, no, this really happened, a lot of times that does more damage. When you're having this experience, but you can't, everyone's telling you, no, you don't. So it was normalizing that experience, being there for them, and then connecting them with the psychic medium. And then you had a question?
Yes.
Yes, I know you were closer, to Lorraine, of course, but have you ever thought about taking up Ed's torch and going into more demonology and continuing, his work?
I appreciate that. I do not feel that I am qualified in my life to be like Ed and to devote myself entirely to demonology. Also because I have worked with the Catholic Church on the demonic, and it's very taxing. And I know that a lot of people would like to experience that. An exorcism sanctioned by the Catholic Church, it was traumatic. And I will never turn away a demonic case, but if there was literally no one on the planet who was doing it, maybe I would have felt that push when I was younger. But like Tony and his members of the team, and no one's trying to pretend they're the next Ed. But collectively as a group, we all work together, because times have also changed too, right? Back in Ed's time, there weren't that many exorcists. That's one of the things Ed worked on. Now the church has moved towards selecting more exorcists all over the globe, and allowing others the title of demonologist. At the time, Ed was the only lay demonologist officially sanctioned by the Catholic Church. That has since changed. So it's not necessarily needed like it was back then. But we are still collectively doing the work of Ed and Lorraine.
Well, I really appreciate you being here with us today.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for coming. Are they still able to go visit the museum if they haven't
You
already?
may go visit the museum if you'd like. And thank you all so much.
Thank you for being here. It's been really an honor to meet you and to meet the team. And it was really special for me. So, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good rest of your Sunday, everybody.